Hi, I'm Majella Clarke and I work in Indufor. It's a Finnish consulting firm based in Helsinki, and I'm head of climate change consulting.
So at the minute you're working in Mauritius. Would you like to explain a little bit about what you're doing there?
Yes, we have two sites for a project in Mauritius under the Adaptation Fund. One is a tourist beach in Montjoie, one of the top 5 tourist beaches on the island, and the other site is called Rivière de Galets, and it's about a vulnerable community that suffered the impacts of storm surges in the past.
So can you explain a little bit about some of the challenges that you face when you've been working on those projects?
Well, when it comes to the Adaptation Fund, this was one of the first projects that was actually approved, and the site down in Rivière de Galets was a very interesting situation where we were looking at a managed retreat. This is where we take a community of about 400 people and we're asked to take a look at the possibility of moving this community away from the shoreline and let the sea level rise eventually take the shoreline. One of the things that we came into knowing is the issue of safeguards, and the Adaptation Fund and the national implementing entity, the UNDP safeguards, actually created some challenges for moving the community. There wasn't enough flexibility or time in really taking the ability to address the moving of the community, given that projects close after several years.
And I presume that those safeguards are in place to protect local communities. They're designed to protect them, is that right?
That's correct. These safeguards are there to make sure, for example, that resettlement action plans are taken when you're looking at moving a community. One thing that came out was that both the Adaptation Fund and the UNDP have a safeguard. When it comes to resettlement, it has to be the absolute last option. But when you're talking about a slow onset event like sea level rise and subsequent storm surges with increased frequency, we see that there's actually a need that this doesn't become a last priority or a last preferred option, that moving communities is actually right up there as the most important thing to do.
And how does that link to the climate talks here in Paris, particularly around loss and damage?
Well, with respect to loss and damage, there's been a lot of talk recently about introducing a new mechanism in addition to the WIM, and that is a proposal.
Sorry, what's the WIM?
Warsaw International Mechanism, and on loss and damage. And what we see is that there's been a call for including a new mechanism called a climate change displacement mechanism. And I would assume that this particular proposal has been put on the table in the realization that the current setup of the Adaptation Fund and implementing entities such as the UNDP are not really set up to address the complexities of moving communities as a first preference, as a project, and as a response to climate change. So far the norm has been, let's do everything else before we move the community. I think that this type of a displacement mechanism would then say the priority is to move the community out of danger, and at the moment we see that there is a need for this type of a mechanism.
So safeguards need to be safeguards for the future, not just safeguards for the present.
That's absolutely correct. Safeguards for the future, a new mechanism is needed.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.